Let's bring you this conversation now. So a new research report by the Stellenbosch Business School, the University of Johannesburg, as well as the Northwest University and the Small Enterprise Development and Finance Agency has found that while South Africa has no shortage of entrepreneurs, a weak support ecosystem is preventing many businesses from growing and creating jobs. The country's entrepreneurship ecosystem ranks as the 7th weakest globally. To discuss this further, as well as tell us what's needed to create an entrepreneurship environment where businesses can thrive, we bring in now Acting Chair in Entrepreneurship Education at the University of Johannesburg. That's Professor Natanya Meyer. Prof, thank you for your time on the program. So, lots more needs to be done to ensure that these entrepreneurs put their best foot forward. Let's start with where the gaps are at this stage.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. And perhaps I'm going to back step just one step just to explain what this report actually measures, just so our viewers knows exactly. So that 3.9 that you referred to is actually a combined score of 13 framework conditions or ecosystem conditions that we allocated that refers to having a good ecosystem. So we've measured all 13 of them, and if you add up the summary, it comes to 3.9 out of 10. So clearly we are, below average and at the bottom rank of the leadership of 56 countries that's been included in this report. So if we have a look at some of these indicators, and while I was waiting to come on live, I could obviously see what you were reporting in the background. And a lot of the problems that's currently, being headlined in the news as part of the whole election is also some of the problems that we are seeing the main cause for businesses not performing the way that they're supposed to. And the first one, the one that's in 2025 with our most recent report that scored the weakest, was government policy support and relevance. So we're definitely seeing that the support of government policies and the relevance thereof, now remember specifically for small businesses, is not what it's supposed to be. So that was the weakest link at the moment.
And here's the thing, Prof, you usually talk about these grand plans that are set to ensure that these businesses, as well as entrepreneurs, maybe after they get funding, they're able to take that funding, run with it, so their businesses are a success. But clearly, somewhere along the line, something really does seeps through the cracks. Let's talk about that. And why does it seem like support for these entrepreneurs is something that usually withers away with the wind?
Okay, so I think what we also just need to say, we don't want to just criticize and say that nothing is working and everything is going bad. We do have pockets of excellence in some areas where there's really good programs and projects and policies, and where entrepreneurs actually have access to these. And of course, these are mostly in your urbanized areas. From our report, we also look at awareness, and entrepreneurs need to tell us how aware are they of these projects and programs. And what we tend to find is that, of course, in our urbanized cities, Gauteng, Cape Town, and in areas in KwaZulu-Natal, there is more access for these entrepreneurs to actually go in and get support from these programs, which of course is set out there for them. But a lot of our entrepreneurs, and specifically when we look at small business development, is situated in rural and peri-urban areas. And this is the areas that's often neglected. Entrepreneurs don't know what access to support there is. Access is scant and distributed. What we also see is that in the cases where there is access to these projects and programs, that it's sometimes very difficult for entrepreneurs to navigate the complexity of applying for these programs and projects that are available. And then sometimes what we also see, even if they get to a point where they actually manage to submit an application for funding or for skills training or whatever it may be, that the turnaround time for getting feedback if they were accepted, and then even if they do get accepted, for actually getting into the program is quite daunting and quite frustrating sometimes for some of these smaller entrepreneurs, especially, as I said, in rural and peri-urban areas.
Yeah, and I hear you when you make mention of that, Prof. And my whole point that I'm trying to drive across as well by saying that where there are gaps, where there are shortcomings, we ought to call that out, because likely something is going to be done about it if we call it out, when something thing is lagging behind. And let's talk about those areas that we talk about now, such as your rural KwaZulu-Natal, as well as the many other areas where we're seeing these, pockets of entrepreneurship mushrooming there. What really needs to be done? Would it be a joint effort of government as well as the various stakeholders coming to the table to say, we're raising our hands to ensure that we make sure that these entrepreneurs put their best foot forward?
Yes, definitely. You were spot on when you said a variety of stakeholders. We cannot just put this, this big responsibility only on government, although a lot of the factors that we actually measure does come from government side. As I said, one of the inserts or the clips just while I was waiting was specifically on infrastructure. And this is actually the indicator that dropped the most if we look at the 2024 and the 2025 scores. So infrastructure is a real problem, and we get two types of infrastructure. Of course, your physical hardcore infrastructure, where people are struggling with potholes, they're struggling with distribution of their networks due to this. The water supply, electricity has stabilized slightly over the last few years, but still there is areas where this is still a problem. And then, of course, we get our softer sides of infrastructure, commercial and professional infrastructure, where a lot of these areas don't have the necessary broadband and necessary things that they need to actually bring their businesses online and to ensure, that the market they are entering is wider than just the public around them. And this is something that, of course, we know needs to happen for businesses to get out there. So that's definitely something we need to look at.
And I want us, just before we let you go, just to put emphasis on those pressure points that we need to emphasize the most at this moment, because it's not just about jobs, no. It's about feeding families. It's about growing the economy, as well as many other things as well that contribute positively to society.
Yeah, so what we've actually done in this report, we've set out a 5-year plan. And we are really hoping after our launch last week, where we had some industry and government stakeholders, in the room, that this conversation will not just stop here and after I say goodbye tonight, that it's the end. We really need to look at these things and move forward. And if I can just shortly summarize in closing, what we are thinking needs to happen for this to change is there's a short, medium, and a long-term strategy. So short-term, and that's the easiest, is we need to stop the bureaucracy, the red tape, regulation, and make it easier for small businesses to enter the market, get registered, get formalized, and to be able to sell their product. We need to remember, and I understand that regulation and compliance within the business realm is very important, so we're not saying that must be gone. But a lot of these regulations and things are more implemented or designed for bigger and larger companies. So small and micro businesses are really struggling to navigate this complexity of getting registered and getting formalized. Then the second one, which is the medium-term recommendation, will of course be to improve the infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the last one, we need to work on culture, because we need to change the output and the viewpoint of how people view entrepreneurship in our country. And of course, that is the one that takes the longest. It doesn't happen overnight.
Indeed, and it will take all hands on deck. I must thank you so much, as Parker Chair for now, Acting Chair in Entrepreneurship Education at the University of Johannesburg. That's Professor Natanya Meyer joining us there. Thanks so much indeed.